Ashburn is, but thanks for hosting our Twitch show.
Awesome. Well, here we go.
Great.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I'm Evan Irwin, and we begin each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
What's poppin'?
Ruben Bressler.
Hello. Have I potatoed yet?
Ruben, you are coming to us from a spanking new
future.
Wow.
I'm coming to you live from the future. I have like a touch screen. I don't know how I survived Twitter on a laptop without a touch screen. It's amazing. But yeah, I'm apparently very scooted far back for whatever reason, based on my new built-in webcam.
Sure.
But no more potatoes! Hooray!
Touchscreens feel especially great when you block or mute people because you can literally be like boop, and
I
just
have booped
flip them
you.
away.
That's incredible. Well, thanks to our Kickstarter supporters, Ruben is a little less tatery tonight.
All right. Thank you so much to the Kickstarter folks. For all of you who want me to destroy my old potato machine,
No.
what kind of masochists are you? It's sitting right here. Here's the old machine that we used to broadcast on.
Wow.
All my poker patches on there.
Right.
Some other cool stuff on there. And no, I will not be destroying it like it's a printer in office space. I'm going to keep that.
It's got a little hand crank on the side. That's how you keep it
Right.
running. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
how it works.
You started up like a 1962 Chevy. It just takes a couple minutes. But but yeah, I have my new laptop that I'll be using from now on.
You look great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I always look great. It's just now you can actually see it. Previously we tried to hide that so that it wasn't, I didn't want to break the internet.
Right.
Like so many Kardashians in the past.
So many.
But we can't avoid it anymore. So.
Well, we start here each week with our trumpet blast. You can get one if you support us at our highest level on Patreon. And here's the latest. Legacy, Standard, and Friends, oh my. Pay attention to the Discord, this being the Magic Mics Discord, for a mini Magic Mics meetup at GP Seattle.
Ooh, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool. So
Cool.
thanks to our top tier patron who requested that very trumpet blast. Yeah. And if you want to hang out with us on Discord, where we talk about all sorts of cool stuff, and you can see some of my projects before anybody else, you go support us at patreon.com/magicmics. And thanks very much for all who do currently.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to kick it off with the giveaway. The giveaway this week is a little thing. I kind of worked it up a little bit because I love Pauper, and I was asking about certain products that Cool Stuff makes that have to do with Pauper. And one of the things that Cool Stuff makes is a set of commons. You can buy a complete set of commons for the new set for $20, $19.99, full boat. And by God, I took that and I ran with it. And we're calling this thing the Dominaria Pauper Pack, and we're going to give away 2 of those tonight. 2 of those. If you're an MTG #MTG Pauper aficionado, please enter in the contest. The links are in there. I'm sure it's stripped away from YouTube because it always does. And Ruben has to help me. But
Yep.
and now his super whiz-bang computer can actually do so. I'm pretty excited about that.
Right.
There were multiple times where you're like,
multiple things open.
you're like, my computer's just tatered. I can't.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Can't do it with this technology. This is such a good idea. I had a bunch of friends, especially back when I lived in Ohio, that one of the first things that they would do was that they would buy full sets of the commons, full sets of the uncommons before any of them spiked in price and certain uncommons became untenable. Certain uncommons, especially things like, Path to Exile and Kitchen Finks, certain commons, things along the lines of Utopia Sprawl and Ancient Stirrings. You never know what's going to be super expensive in the future. Getting a full Pauper pack is a great prize. I love it.
Yeah, I'm excited. So I want to make sure that Pauper players are aware of what this is and then what it can do for them. And I wanted to let everybody know that it exists. So hey, check it out. Enter the contest. It's great. Move on here.
I am bringing Pauper to Seattle if you're trying to spell sling some Pauper.
And Ruben has chosen decks to play in honor of me, decks that I would love since I can't be at Seattle.
Right.
So
a couple of my decks are graveyard shenanigans.
Yeah, so you can still get a taste of Aaron without me being there, courtesy of Ruben. So thank you.
And Ruben, I take it you'll be taking some amount of swag.
Oh, of course. I'm packing up all of my my tokens and a couple of the play mats with me. just in case, But certainly tokens are going to be available for signing. And I might stop by the local Whole Foods, pick up a bag of potatoes. We'll see.
Write some jokes on them, take some selfies. It'll be terrific.
Awesome.
Absolutely. So we're starting with our first pick. And the first pick this week was all about the Sagas. Now, even though we knew what many of the Sagas already did, first of all, we didn't know what they looked like. And it turns out they're looking absolutely amazing. That's first, thanks to the new frame. But secondly, we're also learning what their rarity is. Because when all those cards first got put up, there was a non-zero amount of Magic stores, whether it's eBay or just websites, that put up pre-orders based on rarities they expected the cards to be.
Yeah.
So let's take a look first here at History of Benalia. This is the 2-white and a generic mana saga that for the first and second lore counters, it creates a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. And the last one, knight creatures you control get +2/+1 till end of turn. Now, I was 100% expecting this to be rare. I think it's a cool effect. It's good. It makes guys, it pumps guys. That's sweet, whatever. This thing turned out to be mythic. And I don't think it reads like a mythic card. Make a 2/2, make another 2/2, pump some 2/2s that you made earlier. Doesn't sound like a very mythic effect to me, but here we are with that orange symbol right down there in the corner.
I was going to say, how is it that we don't know what the rarity is? Like, is that, why is that?
Because the FAQ didn't include it. The FAQ doesn't care what the rarity is because it has nothing to do with the way the cards work. So
right, but I'm saying it's not featured on the art like it usually is?
You didn't have the art. All you had
is
the FAQ, which was the text
I see
file.
what you're saying. I thought you said the card itself now didn't have it. I was like, is it that cramped? There's no room? Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
Well, just assumed. I mean, even our good friends over at Mythic Spoiler had it listed as an uncommon. And the fact that it's a mythic, I think that's a little bit of a tipping of a hand as to how strong Wizards of the Coast thinks that this was going to be in Standard.
I think this card's going to be, I thought it was going to be good. This card's probably bananas because you don't run one of these. You run 4 of these. And to play one and then to play another one, you're just pumping out knights, you're blowing up your knights, you're making them bigger, you're making them stronger basically constantly, which is arguably a very, very powerful effect. So, there's a ton of knights in this set too. I mean, you've got the Knight of Grace, which has been officially spoiled, a bunch of other cards that have been not quite officially spoiled yet. There's the enchantment named Dub, which is amazing, by the way. Dub.
Yeah, Dub. Turns things into knights. I mean, knight seems to be a real the creature type specifically for white and a little bit in black.
Right.
So there's going to be a lot of stuff going on in there.
I fully think that white-black aggro, white-black knight aggro definitely needs to be something that people build and experiment with because Wizards is clearly punishing it. So, that said, what I expected was Fall of the Thran, which we can now see, and again, an unbelievably awesome artwork from Jason Felix. And again, Noah Bradley, if you hadn't seen History of Benalia and you're listening to the podcast, look that up. Because he absolutely killed it with his stained glass, with the Night Warrior. It's absolutely amazing. But Fall of the Thran is the Armageddon. It's a white and 5 generic mana. It's 6 mana, the first thing. And again, when you play the Saga, you add a lore counter. You immediately do the first thing. So you immediately destroy all lands. And that's pretty powerful. And if you can get rid of graveyards, part 2 and part 3, where each player returns 2 land cards from the graveyard to the battlefield, doesn't do anything, doesn't mean anything. So I was expecting that to be the mythic effect because, it's Armageddon. We had Armageddon Standard in like a million years. But no, they kind of flipped it. But Fall of the Thran, I feel this still is going to be some sort of standard player because it's a very powerful effect.
Oh, yeah. Destroy All Lands, it hasn't really been printed on cards at all recently, let alone something as cheap as 6 mana. I know that it's weird to say 6 mana is cheap, but they don't print land destruction like they used to, and to get this effect, the second and third abilities of returning lands to the battlefield, first of all, the fact that they return on your turn as opposed to your opponent's turn is going to be hugely relevant. Being able to get rid of graveyards is obviously another thing, but the fact that we have a 6 mana Armageddon in Standard is going to be enormous.
Yeah, and for the History of Benalia, for those curious, hey, check out my phone. I got my phone wallpaper.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
I love
fantastic.
what they did with the art for the history, the sagas. Is that it's not showing you them happening. It's showing you the retellings, right? The history of Benalia is in a stained glass window. The the Fall of the Thran is etched into stone, for example, and we'll look at a couple more, I'm sure.
Right. Well, just that's a nice segue because let's take a look over here at the first eruption where Steve Belladin I mean, he wrote a huge blog post. Check it out.
I love that blog post, yeah.
Google Steve Belladin, The First Eruption. Check out how unbelievably intricate and far he went to make this look and feel like a tapestry for you. When you see, while it's not 1,000% clear on the card, when you see the blown up high-res image they can use for marketing and whatnot, it's just absolutely incredible. And it's actually a very, very good card. The First Eruption being a red and 2 generic mana enchantment saga, the first thing it does is deal 1 damage to creature without flying, so it kills all your land and war elves or whatever. The second is that it adds 2 red mana, and that's very important because when you're playing this with 3 mana, and then next turn you play a land, you have 6 mana at your, to do what you will, and that just so happens to be the amount of mana to play in Armageddon. I'm just going to point that out. And lastly, the last thing it does is sacrifice a mountain. If you do, it deals 3 damage to each creature. So that's neat, but for me, this saga is literally just about that second ability. Like, it's that or go home.
I mean, the story that's told in this one is fantastic as well, because if you pay any attention to the story, that Shiv was hatched from a dragon egg and became the land of Shiv, and then the Gitu erupted. And so then you have the full storytelling there of the ash flying up into the air, the creation of the world, and then the destruction of the land. It's just a really cool story, and that tapestry art is just spectacular. I thought at first what happened was he made the art and then got it tapestried, and then a photo was taken of the tapestry. Like, it looked so much like an actually woven piece of art that I thought that's what happened. The fact that it's actually paint, it's not digital, that is a painted piece of work, is unbelievable how much work must have gone into that.
He could have easily just applied a Photoshop filter. He did not have to do this in the real world. And he was talking about hand cramps, and it took him a very long time, and it shortened the amount of time he could work, and it was unbelievably painstaking. He'd never do it again. Yeah. But he did go there that far, and I think that's super, super cool. And the last one we want to talk about here is Time of Ice. Now, as Aaron Forsythe noted, this is essentially how the different civilizations or societies just kind of, they kept their history. This is how they did it. It was a stained glass window for a Benalia. It was a tapestry, sort of something that was woven, for the Shiv and the Gitu. Time of Ice basically explains the Ice Age. I can imagine for the Kildorans, because for a blue and 3 generic mana, it's a enchantment saga, uncommon. And the first and second things it does is tap target creature an opponent controls. It does an untap during its controller's untap step for as long as you control Time of Ice. And lastly, it returns all tap creatures to their owner's hand. So it can lock down 1, it can lock down 2, and then everything goes away. Because, that's what an Ice Age does. It takes everything with it.
It's kind of an interesting callback to Thing in the Ice. Thing in the Ice sort of had that melting kind of effect, and then when it's done melting, it bounces everything back. And a key aspect of this card is the tentacles on the bottom. The tentacles do belong to Merit Lage. Yeah. You'll remember when Shadows over Innistrad came out, the conspiracy theories as to who's the big bad of this set, and people were looking at Thing in the Ice and going, Merit Lage, calling it right now. And there was that diehard group of people that thought it was Merit Lage, and of course they were wrong. But needless to say, when people saw Ice and Tentacles and an ability that was very reminiscent of Thing in the Ice, some people were very happy to see this, and I think it's great. I love Merit Lage, and I love
the art. Sorry, the art callbacks in all of these are spectacular.
Limdol.
Yeah, there you go.
Limdol is the skeleton or the dead body on the ice, and so that's a thing. And there are people that are predicting that Limdol is the Raven Man, and so that also has set the Vorthos as aflame. And I think it's great. There's a lot of talk around this card, and I love everything about it.
So Wizards made their own little interview show.
Oh God.
They called it Access Magic. And Aaron, would you tell us a little bit, and along with Ruben, who's a fan of the host, tell us a little bit about this thing they did with Rosewater, with Richard Garfield, and stuff.
So this interview was entertaining, but for all of the wrong reasons. So it's a sit-down interview with a young lady named Ashley Birch. I'm under the impression she's a famous geek celebrity. She does shows and she does D&D, and
she's a voice actress mostly.
Yeah,
she's most well known as Chloe from The Last of Us. She was also in Horizon Zero Dawn.
Borderlands. She was Tiny Tina, right? Okay.
Yes.
And Ashley's done things before. I believe I saw her during the Battle for Zendikar reveal at PAX 2. So she's lovely. So she does this sit-down interview in a set with Morrow and Richard Garfield. Now, the first thing that jumps out at me when watching this is that everybody's wearing more makeup than a drag queen. Like, they are caked with makeup. It's very obvious that everybody involved is wearing a lot of makeup. And so they're doing this interview. And the other thing that tickled me so much is that when Morrow really starts to get into his Morrowness, and you know how he gets, the look on Richard Garfield's face, because Richard Garfield is more a very quiet, very stoic man. He doesn't seem to get too excited about much, or if he does, he sort of keeps it in. But when Morrow lets the freak flag fly, you can see Richard Garfield just kind of go, and almost just be like, what have I done? And so I found this entertaining for those two reasons, but it was very informative. And every time I watched this video, and I watched it several times, I imagined us just sort of doing an SNL parody where like Evan is Richard, you are Morrow Rubin, and I'm Ashley Birch, and like we could totally do this.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing you're flying to Orlando, and I just bought you plane tickets.
There we go.
That's very, very, very exciting. So that said, the Sagas are sweet. That video is a treat for a few reasons. Though it is great to have Richard Garfield back designed, even though you can see him like going, well, not always at the office.
He has this presence about him. Like even just watching him, like he's a doctor. He's Dr. Richard Garfield, and he just has this way of carrying himself that is very. Back when I played Vampire the Masquerade, we called it presence, like presence 5. You just had sort of awe and like Morrow. We see so much of Morrow that we feel like we know him. He feels sort of like our friend's dad. There's a level of comfort there. But with Garfield, because he's not as visible and all of that, there is just sort of this feeling of like, that's Richard Garfield, and that's an amazing feeling, and I hope he never loses that.
There's a hilarious thing associated that I always associate with Richard Garfield and his relationship to Magic, which is he was an established game designer before and then just kept designing other games. Yeah. I don't think he expected Magic to be the blowout success that it's become. I've always looked at it along the lines of back when I was studying film in college and learned about more about the production of the film Casablanca. The writers, the directors, the actors, everyone just thought it was another job. They didn't understand. They didn't think that it was anything special. And then it's just this cultural touchstone that's lasted 70 years, and no one working on it at the time thought that it was going to be anything other than another mass-produced movie. I think that it's the same thing with Richard Garfield. He's like, yeah, it's just another game I made, like Robo Rally, like King of Tokyo, like it's just another thing on my mantelpiece. And now it's like the biggest thing ever and has been for decades, and he's just kind of like, I mean, I like Magic, but I got all these other games too, right?
Well, you see that with a lot of the artists too. I remember there was a big book of artists that came out. I think there was some special occasion that I think marked the release of this book, but I was really kind of sad to see how many artists were kind of like that, where they were like, I've done other things, and it's like, yeah, I'm sure you have, but none that probably have had the impact of this work. Like, I'm not being shady here, but you could definitely tell the artists that still were very grateful for the opportunity, even if they're not doing Magic anymore. But then there were just those few artists that I really felt were kind of stank about it, that were just like, I just didn't expect that attitude. And I think there's a way to do both.
Well, for those who sort of want to experience Richard Garfield's other games, I could recommend The Great Dalmoody, which is a really cool card game, which is really neat. He also made Netrunner, aka Android Netrunner, which you can find as a living card game now from Fantasy Flight. So it's not a collectible anymore. You just buy the set of cards and you get a play set of everything, which is nice. And
can I just say that 4 years ago, almost to the day, Richard Garfield totally emailed me.
Right. I remember that.
Yeah, I had to go through, I had to call in so many favors just to even get his email address, because again, he's not a visible person. I had to call up Chapin's ex-wife, who then got me in touch with this person, who then put this person on the line, and they were like, you have to promise to delete it after we send it to you. And I sent him an email and I said, hello, Mr. Garfield, I would love to have you on my show, The Deck Tease. He said, hello, Aaron, I'm very busy this month. And so I still have the email of Richard Garfield saying, hello, Aaron, I'd like to be on your show. And I was like,
very nice. How many levels of presence do you have in real life, Aaron?
I'd like to say I'm at least a 3.
This is out of 10 or out of?
Once you get to the advanced powers, it sort of stops at 5, and then you can start building up past 6. But really, 5 is where you're going to stop usually. At 3, that means she's got the dread gaze. She gets to.
I do have that look.
The eyeball.
Yeah, I have been. My side eye could get me on the Pro Tour.
We're all Toreadors here, so we all naturally.
I was a Giovanni though, which surprise.
They don't have presence though.
They don't, but.
Wow. All right, we're gonna move on here to Gather the Townsfolk. Some people have heard of. God. Nerdy role players.
Sorry, we're too nerdy for your Magic the Gathering podcast.
That's right. We keep it classy around here. So moving on into Gather Townsfolk, our friend Gavin Verhey had noted, essentially gave some real details about the format. The last time it was like, here's this promo that you guys can get super pissed off about, and here's this format by. And now they come back and like, okay, let's talk about it a little bit. Let's talk about building the Brawl. The fact is, it's standard Commander. And part of it, again, you can see is the Hasbro subsidiary. How part of it is just it's a cool new Commander format. And for what it's worth, I've been seeing it around cool stuff, and I've heard employees talk about it, and they're building Brawl decks, and they're having a lot of fun with it, and it's been super cool. And I also think that it is absolutely just another step for Wizards to say a Planeswalker can be your commander. They should have done it in the first. They should have done it in the first place when they said all commanders are all Planeswalkers legendary. They should have just went ahead and done it.
This is 1v1 though, yeah?
It's 1v1.
Okay.
Each player begins at 30 life rather than 20. If you're playing a multiplayer game, each player gets a free mulligan in that case, which is fine. And otherwise, it seems like either you designate a legendary creature or planeswalker as your commander, and you got 59 other cards, and have fun.
Yeah.
So,
it looks sweet. I'm like I said, I'm bringing a. And I said during the pre-show, I'm bringing a Brawl deck to Seattle. I don't want to spoil it, folks, but I am bringing a Brawl deck to Seattle. So if you guys want to challenge me there, it is a nice one. And I'm really excited that people have already sort of bought into the format even before it's become an official Wizard-sponsored format with Dominaria, so that you can use some of the cards that are available right now, which is kind of cool. I just think it's a cool ability, or a cool new format for people to try out. Commander has, for all of the good that it's done for the financial side of things in Magic, it is difficult to get certain Commander singles. It's become an expensive format. Whereas Brawl is much more in line with Pauper. You need to spread out your standard cards, and not every standard card's $1 billion, and so you're able to build up several Brawl decks for less than a pretty penny. So I'm excited for that format. I'm also excited to sleep on Gavin's couch when I get to Seattle, which is going to be nice. And I can ask him any questions you guys have about Brawl or other things like the March Gladness bracket. But I'm really keen on giving Brawl a try.
Yeah, I think Brawl might also be good in terms of power level. I tend to, I don't think Brawl is for me, and that's fine. But I think, one of the issues I've certainly seen with Commander is, I tend to play very budget, dare I say, underpowered decks. And, a lot of times the people in your pod are not on board with that. And so I feel like, though, if you're all sort of limited to standard cards, Standard is not really known for being a broken format, or not really having broken things, be there. And so I'm under the impression that if you're playing Brawl, you will somewhat be on a level playing field, or a more level playing field than you would be if you were in sort of the wild west of Commander.
Yeah.
And I think that I got this eye opener myself, which was, I was like, what, I'm gonna dip the toes into the Commander pool, and I bought a Precon. I believe it was a 2016 Precon or something, and I was just like, wee splash, and they were just like, kill you instantly with Gaia's Cradle and dual lands, and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna play my 3-mana 2/3 and say go. I mean, or whatever I was doing. It's just because when a format has literally everything, to basically have what you would describe as the budget format, it does a lot of things. First of all, you don't need as many cards. Second of all, the power level is way lower. And for Wizards, sort of on the corporate money-making side, it makes you want to go buy standard packs and or singles, and that's a good thing for them. So this, to me, is a very win-win type situation.
It's also a nice way to use up some of those standard cards you're not using. My local game store for F&M, they give you packs for every round that you win, and I'm not typically a standard player. And, most of the time, and I'm also not a drafter, so I tend to crack the packs because I'm a monster. But I'll put the rares in my binder, and then I'm stuck. I think we all have those piles, which is uncommons and commons everywhere. And so, rather than throwing those out or just sort of putting them in a box you'll never see again, it gives you a reason to use those cards, and that's always a good thing when you can sort of reduce, reuse, recycle.
As far as I know, there's no ban list here, so you can play with your
standard ban list. Standard ban list. Regular old standard ban list. You can't have Saheeli Rai as your general and then just play the fellow.
No Either Works Marvel? Come on.
No Either Works Marvel. Although I guess the power level of the banned cards is mitigated by only having one in your deck, except for the Felidar Guardian Saheeli Rai combo, because you always start the game with Saheeli in your general zone. But yeah, I mean, there is the standard ban list. The thing that I find most interesting about the Brawl announcement in general is that a lot of these formats that have sprung up in popularity or have been groundswells in popularity have been community driven. Yeah. Frontier, Tiny Leaders, Pauper, all were grassroots campaigns from the community that moved towards Wizards. This is an internal Wizards of the Coast creation being delivered to the players. It's had a much different lifespan, and so I found that very interesting. And thus far, it seems that the players have latched onto it, and there hasn't really been like a backlash of like, don't tell me what formats to play. Which would be kind of weird, I guess, but it has happened in the past. And so I am cautiously optimistic that Brawl can be one that can survive going forward.
I mean, we'll see. Again, for me, it's just, can you just make the Planeswalkers commanders? Can you just do it? Sure. They're going to do it. I'm telling you, mark my words. They're going to do this one day, and they're going to be like, after Brawl, people really like playing with any Planeswalkers, their commander. And we're like, duh.
Right. But again, Commander started from the outside going in, and now it's in a different part of its lifespan. So who makes that decision?
All right, so we got to keep moving. Mark Rosewater is involved with an Original Magic Art Store charity event. Original Magic Art works with artists to get playmats made that may not otherwise be made, and or are able to help or artists sell them directly. This one, however, is about the one and only piece of magic art that Mark Rosewater has ever done, and that's Look at Me, I'm the DCI. And it's incredible. And you can buy a playmat for charity for $40 or a print for $20. And Mark Rosewater will sign it. And all of the profits will go to the Highline Big Picture High School, which I believe one of Mark Rosewater's children actually went to. Mm-hmm. And so he wanted to help the school, and all profits from the sale will be benefit the school and their mission of interest-based education. So this was awesome. They immediately sold out of their first run, and they had to make more. And here's more, I think, back on the website at this point that you can go get yours if you want them. And it was just terrific to see, and I just wanted to make sure we called out and let everybody know what is going on.
Yeah, Josh's site is amazing. He has formed a great relationship with many artists and has offered and offers things you really can't find anywhere else. The Baleful Strix playmat, the Blood Gas playmat, which I have to pick up one of these days. He's just really the place to go. I think he got his name with just by doing sort of the classic art playmats, but he's kind of evolved a little bit. And I love what he's doing. I don't really think, and he also gets involved in situations where people will make playmats unofficially. Like he gets involved with discussions about that and talks about sort of the ethics of that, and just a great guy and really performs a great service for the community. And it's just this site is dangerous. It's dangerous like Cartamajigs is dangerous, where you're like, I'm just going to go and get like a token. And then you leave with like 30 tokens, 2 playmats, a t-shirt, and some coasters. And you're like, damn it. And so, definitely go look at this site. But I'm telling you, you're going to want to hide your credit card because there's lots of stuff and it's all awesome.
Absolutely.
So, Ruben, you're going to be on a teeny-weeny, eensy-weensy little Twitch channel coming up, ain't you?
I thought y'all might like to know that I'm going to be on the official Dungeons & Dragons channel.
Whoa, official.
Coming up. This is twitch.tv/DND, DND, three letters. I'm going to be on Dragon Talk on Monday, which is the official Dungeons & Dragons podcast. So if you guys want to tune in live to that, I'll be chatting with Greg Tito of Wizards of the Coast at 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern. I'll be talking about this show, probably, because I'm a well-known Magic the Gathering person and not so well-known in D&D yet. And we'll be talking about the crossover between Magic and D&D and what's possible there. Things along those lines. I'll be discussing all the various history of myself with D&D and also how it associates with Magic. So I'm just going to be chatting with Greg for a little while, but I wanted you guys to be aware that I'll be on Dragon Talk on Monday, which is very exciting for me.
Congrats, buddy.
I've always wanted to play D&D. I just have never really found a group. I know my local game store offers a D&D on Saturday, but I'm really nervous. Like I would be a total noob, and I worry that I'm gonna like hold up the game somehow, where they're gonna be like, oh God, we gotta slow it down for her. And like I'm very anxious and very nervous, but I would love to play.
The thing about the Dungeons and Dragons game is that it isn't really a game. It's just long form improv storytelling. There's no wrong way to play D&D. And so while it might look Yeah, and it looks intimidating, but just like how Magic looks intimidating, once you get into it, you have to get outside of the hard candy shell into the chewy center, and then you'll be welcomed with open arms.
People often describe me that way too.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So, and I've been playing, as I've mentioned many times on the show, I got into Magic partially because of D&D. My parents played D&D before they started dating. I was born this way. I'm the geekiest human on the planet. And that D&D and that D&D flavor passed over into my Magic the Gathering love, and so bringing that back together and all that kind of stuff.
Much like foods I don't like, I feel like I don't like D&D because I've never experienced it the right way. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like, I don't really like, clams or whatever on the half shell. Maybe I just haven't gotten the right concoction with the cracker and the sauce and all this other stuff. Maybe I've just not done that the right way.
I hated Brussels sprouts when I was a tiny baby. I hated avocado when I was a young kid. I mean, exactly. There you go.
And by the way, I was talking about oysters, not crabs, because whatever.
No, I know.
But you know what I mean. Either way, just
we
food,
got
you're
you,
just
brother.
like food. You're just like, but then you taste it by a chef, and you're like, whoa,
D&D does a lot of very important things. It is an exercise in showing empathy and sympathy, in that you're playing someone who isn't you, and so you get to view other viewpoints. It trains you to be more sympathetic and empathetic as just a human being, and it's just a lovely game that has been taking off. I mean, the Player's Handbook is on the New York Times bestseller list this week. It was printed first 4 years ago. Like, that's just a ridiculous thing for a rule book for a game to do. It's at an all-time high. Dungeons and Dragons is, and the capability of the crossover between Magic and D&D is something I'm very interested in pursuing, and I think I'm the guy to do it. So I'm happy to chat with Greg Tito coming up this Monday on Dragon Talk about it.
All right, so we're going to move on here to a new Magic the Gathering logo. As of Dominaria, we have our new shiny, sleek, when you look at it, you can just hear it going shing,
Yeah.
Like shing, just like, it's metal.
It looks good.
It's glowy. It's really cool. It's very slick. I think it's really nice, actually. And as you scroll down here, you'll see it's on Dominaria products and whatnot. And then you will get to see this little exercise that Wizards gets to do. And the exercise is that if we could just change the card back, check out how cool it would be. Now, for a long time, you can recall, or if you do recall, Ultra Pro made sleeves that had a blue logo instead of the yellow logo, because that's what Wizards wanted it to be. Instead of brown on yellow, it was supposed to be blue. That's what they would prefer. So if they were changing card backs, if they could do that, that's what it would look like. And it's always funny to me because you see this rebranding, you see how the brand has changed in some way, and they also have this very sort of slick, almost futuristic type.
It looks nice.
Yeah, with just like this little outlines of the mana symbols. You don't get colored in balls or whatever, and you get this really nice sheen, and it's very futuristic. It's blue lights and stuff, and you can buy these sleeves from Ultra Pro soon, because again, in a perfect world, Wizards would be able to snap their fingers and be able to print these with these backs, and we could move on from there. Now,
I mean, unfortunately, we aren't at a place where every card that is ever played will be in a sleeve, so we can't do the card backs, but we've experimented with Magic cards that don't have backs before. I mean, Transform is a thing that exists.
Right.
So it's possible that maybe someday they just print cards with a different back that doesn't have the Deckmaster logo on it, for example, since that's not a thing, but it's... Yeah.
What's the harm to going infinite really fast before we come back here? Like, is it really? What if they actually did print a different back on a Magic card? Like, are you not?
What's it going to screw up? Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think they need to. I think they need to fix what's going on the front of the Magic cards before they start to venture into the back of the Magic cards. I mean. Okay.
Well, that aside, just pushing, let's wave a wand and that crap doesn't exist anymore. If they have a different card back, yes, we're talking about some kitchen tablers who are pissed off because they don't use sleeves, and sleeves are the worst thing ever, even though there is an entire gigantic industry built around pieces of plastic wrapping around these cards. Yeah. I just don't feel like it would hurt as much as I can imagine this boogeyman is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is the type of idea you just probably would never even hear in the WotC halls of, like, what if we just printed the back that we wanted on the cards? Right. And be like, oh, you're the worst, whatever. Moving on here to the Japanese MTG coverage team. Now, let me be clear.
Speaking of lacking in innovation.
Let me be super, super clear. If anyone out there happens to manage a broadcast, as I may or may have not done once upon a time, you go here, you take notes, and you pay attention, because Japan has moved coverage forward while we weren't really paying that much attention.
Yeah.
And there's 4 real sort of areas in which you could talk about exactly what they've improved. And again, obviously coverage is very good, I think, at the moment. I mean, coverage can only have sort of slow incremental moves, but they've made them. So let's talk about them. First, showing the facial expressions of the cards when certain interactions happen. This is about more or less directing. This is about, first of all, they show a lot they show a lot more of the player than most do, than certainly most broadcasts do. So you get to see more of the body language, the reaction of it, and honestly, just better directing. Just being able to know when I play Thoughtseize, I need to be on that other player's face as soon as that thing hits the table, because I want to see them go like, oh my God, before they try to regain composure and not give anything away and whatever. Second would be giving close-ups of cards in hand in a separate window, and further giving close-ups of a hand when revealed and laid out on the table. Now, this to me is very clearly +1 coverage person that the current coverage teams are not hiring. And I understand from a employee salary, cost of hotel and travel issue that could be a reason why you don't have. Japan's also a very small country. It's easy to get around, and that's another factor to it. But there is someone there who is holding a camera at their hand and getting a shot of it, and holding a camera over the table just so you can see those cards that they laid out where you couldn't see them that well from just the top down, and that makes a difference. Showing what's on top of the library in a close-up when effect like Corsair Crewfix reveals a card on top of the library. Again, that's a separate sort of shot that you have that you're able to use. And last, and this actually really impressed me, and I never knew how impactful this would be until I actually saw it. And this is a big one. And again, due to the way this is set up, it's going to be difficult for U.S. coverage teams to be like, that's great, let's do it next week. Not true. But while the camera is, it shows the player while they're walking away from the match. It shows the player as the match ends. And that's a really interesting experience, because you can tell just by body language, just by them talking to their friends, who was the winner there. And you can tell sort of how that match went to them on an almost emotional level, because again, you're seeing them, you're getting that empathy from that, you're getting that energy from that, and that's just something you don't see. So those are 4 different things that they're doing. Some of it just involves more staff, and that's what a lot of people who are in charge of coverage are just going to hear. They're going, well, you're just talking about more people and whatever more people. Well, they're also using technology. They're using technology in a different way, in a much more efficient way, to a really terrific result.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that is really culturally specific to this coverage, and I would be interested to see some of the Chinese streams, because I know that there are Chinese streams of Magic tournaments, but we don't get those channels. Like I've never seen a Chinese stream. I know that they do Chinese streams of Magic tournaments and other video games, and they're enormous. Like they dwarf Twitch numbers, but specifically for this comparison between what we're used to on our twitch.tv/magic channel and the Japanese coverage, a lot of this is culturally traditional Japanese style television. We only get little snippets of Japanese style TV and the culture behind it in our lives. We see a couple clips on the internet and on Reddit here and there, and then we remember back when MXC was on Spike TV, right? Like that's pretty much the extent of what we get from Japanese like game shows and TV shows. But there are huge cultural touchstones of Japanese TV that lend themselves so well to gaming, because it's a much more inherent part of the Japanese style. You have what a lot of people refer to as the omnipresent face in the box. The reaction shot is a much more important facet of things to Japanese TV viewers, and so they will often have celebrities or the hosts or whoever already in a little picture-in-picture as a thing is happening, so that you can see the reaction. And they take that a lot more to heart in their Magic. You get to switch up scenes a lot more with the Japanese coverage. For American coverage or traditional European style and American style coverage, you get a real stale camera, what's called a stale shot. Orson Welles used to have in his movies like 90-second takes where the camera wouldn't move at all, and that was like a thing that he like would challenge himself to do, which was, how can I make a scene stay entertaining without cutting away? And they're doing that in Magic, but like not on purpose. They're just leaving the camera where it is and hoping people keep watching. Whereas every clip in this Reddit thread, there's constantly a new camera angle. There's constantly something happening on the screen, changing every 15, 20, 30 seconds to give the audience something new to look at. I'm not a huge fan of the shaky cam as people leave the table. I get a little motion sick, but I can see the appeal of wanting the reaction of people getting up and leaving the table. And so in some way, yeah, it definitely does, for sure. The handheld cam of looking at the cards and the handheld cam of people getting up and leaving definitely can see the appeal. There's lots to learn from here. I'm not sure that, for an American audience, they should just copy paste everything that the Japanese are doing. But there's certainly a lot that they're doing that can definitely be applied to Twitch and Magic.
Yeah, I really appreciate the hand cam, which is something we see at the Pro Tours often. You'll see the people with the iPad doing laps around the table. And I feel like, a lot of awkward conversation comes from the fact that the commentators don't know what's in someone's hand. And I feel like if we add even that, if we make that just a permanent fixture of coverage, I feel like that would go a long way towards improving coverage. Not that it's so bad that when I say improving, I don't mean that in a negative way where like you're awful. I think it would just step the cookie up a little bit if you just knew what was in the hand at all times.
Yeah, and they've tried to have the camera like attached to the rig where all the other cameras are, but you have to tell your players to put your hands at a specific spot in the table and leave them there, or get your like Scrabble tile boards and place them there and then leave them there like it's a game of mahjong. And then you get a player like Brian Kibler who's shuffling all the cards all around all the time, and it just doesn't work.
I also think having face cams adds context to situations. Like sometimes you'll see a feature match and you'll assume that it's go for the throat and it's really, but they're having a really good time. Or, there was the big kerfuffle that happened recently with handshakes, and I think it was pretty clear what went on there. But I think when you can see faces or maybe even hear conversations, I think that adds layers to things that might otherwise be taken out of context or blown out of proportion.
No conversations, please, because what happens is they start talking, the commentators stop talking, the commentators stop talking to listen, and then they stop talking, and then but hold on, but
it's a little rough,
right? Yeah. Ultimately, but listen, if you were under my employ and I was telling you about SCG Live, all I kept saying was face cams, face cams, face cams. You're not a fan of people's hands. You're just not. You just don't care. But if you see Reed Duke, for example, and his luxurious locks and his incredible
he has a beard
muscles
now,
and things, and
he's Steve Rogers Civil War instead of Steve Rogers First Soldier.
Right. He's prettier than any of us combined, and it doesn't matter because that's awesome. That's who you can be a fan of. That right there. So if the Japanese are embracing that, I like that clearly, because that's what I was my mantra over and over again.
Well, also at the bare minimum, it also just puts the name with the face. It goes to it helps to build the brand of your players. You want to be able to say that's Brian Brown doing. You want to be able to say that's Brad Nelson. And if you don't know what Brad Nelson looks like, or if you don't put the face up there, I mean, I think it's not really going as far as you could.
All right, so real quick, because it's going on in the chat right now, I can't with the handshake thing. I'm sorry. The whole, the sportsmanship, and do you offer the good game? Do you offer the hand? Are you going to be salty? Are you going to embarrass yourself on camera?
We've covered it before in previous episodes.
This is another one of our touchstones that we every once in a while come back to is a handshake. What constitutes good games? Why are you allowed to not handshake? Like, what's the protocol here? And then we always go back to the it was not GG, it was BG meme. That is one of my favorites of all time. Marshall Sutcliffe had a great write-up, or not a write-up, a video about this, that if you guys want basically the end-all be-all on this discussion, go just watch Marshall's.
There's lots of ways to handle it. There's, thanks for the game versus good game or whatever. Yeah. All that stuff. Again, I just feel like we've went over it like a million times. And
yeah, we actively chose a little behind the scenes tea. When we were forming the show notes for tonight, we all agreed we just didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, we've talked about it enough.
We're exhausted.
So we're going to move on here to something else, which is the Planeswalker decks. The Planeswalker decks were revealed, which was great. They were revealed on Sci-Fi Wire, because you know how often you go to that website.
Sci-fi.com.
Sci-fi.com. It doesn't show up correctly in XSplit. That's terrific.
Cable News Network.
You got it.
Oh,
and that's
the
okay.
young fan who received messages from Chris Evans and others Avengers has died.
Oh no! I saw that kid's video. Oh my god, that's terrible. Well,
look what you made us do. You made us go to Sci-Fi, and now we know that.
Wow.
Thanks, Sci-Fi.
Sorry
huge
about that.
bummer. Well, let's just cut to the chase. One of the important things about the Planeswalker decks wasn't so much the cards. The cards are, as generally seen in Planeswalker decks, they're kind of bad. But there was one card that was previewed and got some people talking, which I thought was really interesting. Nyambi, Faithful Healer, is a blue, a white, and a generic mana for a 2/2 legendary human cleric that says when she enters the battlefield, you may search your library and or graveyard for a card named Teferi Timebender, reveal it, put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. So she goes and gets Teferi. She goes and gets her dad. It says right here, my father will be happy to see you. So I think it was fairly reasonably asked, hey, you have this awesome character, this really cool looking, this powerful, fierce, awesome woman of color, and why is she a healer? And why is the only thing she does is she goes and gets her dad? Like, is it Nyambi, gotta go get my dad? Too. That's what she is? Like, that's where we're at? So... yeah. I mean, is it fair to say, look, first of all, if there's another version of Nyambi in Dominaria proper, I think all of this goes away and who cares, because she actually does something cool in the real set. But if this is our only chance to see Nyambi and that's what we got, is I gotta go get my dad, BRB, like, I just feel like it's a huge missed opportunity at worst.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion about this on Twitter, and it's a valid point. Even there are just little things you could have added to this card to make it what it was. And there were some counter arguments of, well, there's something like this in every Planeswalker deck. There's cards that just tutor up the Planeswalkers, and that's fine. But why are we assigning this character that role? Why don't you just give it to, if the task is so menial that it's in every single Planeswalker deck, you could have given it to anybody else. Why are you giving it to somebody who is supposed to be this esteemed healer? And then you're saying, and even in the flavor text, no less, I'll go get dad. It's just like, there are little things you could have added to the character to even make it more dynamic. We're not saying it had to be completely, overhauled. And just, it could have been any other card. Why did it have to be this one? And so I'm interested to see. I didn't necessarily relate to this feedback or this criticism, but it wasn't really about me. And so I just kind of sat back and listened and read things. And it'll be interesting to see if they expand on her or if she will just be, Niam BRB,
Right. And for me, again, I'm the white guy, I have all the representation in the world, not worried about being on a card, but you're like, oh, strong, black female, let's do this. And like, get my dad, BRB. I swear, he's right here. I saw him just a minute ago. Let me go fetch him. It's a little silly. And again, I think just a missed opportunity. Yeah. That said, moving on here to Desperate Ravens. Sam Black is... quite intellectual, I think is a good way to put it. He's a smart guy. He builds a lot of really cool decks. He plays a lot of really difficult decks, which I think is even more impressive because it's hard to do that under pressure. But Sam Black actually came out with an interesting response to someone saying to him, disliking Commander products is kind of absurd. And he said, well, my position is that casual formats allow for finding creative unintended uses for that vast number of cards that exist. Commander products remove the discovery by prescribing specific tools to the format, and their unique application to that format removes legitimacy. So is it a question of like, that's
You're going to have to translate that because I don't speak binary. What did he say?
Pre-con Commander decks aren't real Commander decks. They're just... pre-made tools for you to go use, and it kind of dictates to you what Commander is, and he doesn't think that's a good thing.
Does she even go here? Like, I don't know anybody. I don't know, and maybe this is my bias talking, but I don't know anybody who has opened a Commander deck out of the box and not made some modifications to it, or has not, just altered it somehow. And if you, I don't agree. I'm not sure I agree with that.
Interesting. And one of the things he notes in responding to some of those who had commented was that he thinks Commander products make Legacy a much worse format because all the Commander cards, the new ones, are legal in Legacy, and Commander cards have legitimately affected Legacy quite a bit, and or the products that are only Legacy plus legal, like Conspiracy and whatnot, but he's pointing out Commander. And it was just interesting. It's not the fact that either of us are feeling super strongly in the fact that he was right or wrong. It was like, I've never seen someone point out the idea that because it was kind of prescribed, it was built, it was constructed for you to see that these are your interactions and this is how you Commander, that's somehow a negative. I thought always that was like, this is your starting point, you know, this is baby's first Commander deck, you know, you gotta start somewhere here.
And I think that that's a big part of this. You know, and first of all, folks who are saying that Sam is not a person who's written about Commander before, I recall one of the first Commander articles I ever wrote was about Sam Black's Sake River Guide.
He said he's written some before,
Yeah, I read that deck and was like, oh, I should go build a blue-white deck that does some cool stuff like that. That was, I don't know, that was years ago when he was writing. I think that was a blackborder.com article.
Wow.
If that website still exists. Anyway, but he's, you know, I think that the other thing about Sam is that he's the type of player that really likes. He looks at the game of Magic as a exciting puzzle to solve, and the pre-con Commander decks are too much of a hint to him. They aren't for him. That's fine. And so, you know, his opinions on what those cards do going forward, cards like Command Tower, he sees as are the most egregious.
Which is interesting because if you follow any of the Commander names like Bruce Richard and Benny Smith, they hate that card. Like they will tell you, like, stop using that card, stop using Temple of the False God. Yeah.
He doesn't want that card. And he also thinks that Commander makes the Eternal formats worse. He thinks that you know, some of the, like, True Name Nemesis is particularly bad.
Well, it was, but okay. I mean, I think got a pretty good point on that one.
I mean, he also thought that, you know, the cards that are originally printed in Commander and then brought to Constructed, things like Scavenging Ooze and Hornet Queen, also are worse. You know, he's not a big proponent of those cards coming into non-Eternal formats, and so I understand where Sam is coming from, and I can disagree. You're allowed, and that's the other thing is I can understand where he's coming from, and I also still just disagree.
It just feels like he could have maybe sat this one out. I feel like he could have summed this all up by just saying it's not for me, period. I got into Commander because of the Commander precons, and you know, you mentioned the type of player that he is, where he sort of enjoys that. You know, I'm not a brewer. You know, I like to think of net decking as like piloting a ship when you're watching like a Star Trek series, where it's like Tom Paris can't build a Voyager, but Tom Paris can absolutely fly the hell out of a Voyager, and I'm the same way. You know, I am certainly not a deck builder, but I can pilot the hell out of a deck if you build it for me. And some people need a little bit more structure. You know, the card pool as it stands right now is very daunting. 16,000 cards, you know, and so there's nothing wrong with saying I need to narrow my focus a little bit here. You know, when I feel more comfortable, I might expand my focus, but whereas he feels very comfortable diving into a pool of 16,000 cards and coming up with something, I need it to be narrowed down a little bit. And so I think it just would have been a lot easier to say it's not for me, call it a day. I don't know how it turned into this discussion.
Well, important context, and I think this is one of those like ties the room together comments. Where it all started was Sam basically just went out there and tweeted and said, Brawl will definitely be my casual constructed format of choice, largely because I hate Command product cards.
Sure.
Which is cool, again.
Yeah.
And that's
Commander before the Commander products was about finding weird corner case cards to fill out your singleton decks.
But I don't think that's changed at all, though. I think if you still go on Tapped Out, you know, Tapped Out is sort of the place where I get my Commander ideas from. You know, you can still find even Atraxa. There's still 100 ways to do Atraxa, despite her being a pre-constructed deck. There are people doing their own takes on Oloro and Daxos. And, you know, I don't necessarily agree that anything has really suffered because of the precons.
So we got to keep moving here. Lots of topics. Magic the Gathering Arena now doesn't have an NDA. You can now go ahead and stream it, which is cool.
Right.
And I've
lots of big names streaming Arena.
And lots of little names who said they were going to stream. I haven't seen you streaming, so fix that.
True.
Remember how I said on the last episode?
Oh, yeah. So
a lot of the big names out there, like Kripparrian from Hearthstone, started streaming. So lots of folks coming in.
And then, of course, those who either have sour grapes or don't know sort of how the internet works, and they're like, what do you mean this person who gets 10,000 people watching them play video games gets more stuff than I do?
I thought that was hilarious.
That's kind of weird. It's just kind of how the internet works, guys. But there was musings on the economy, and there was talk around Wizards saying, hey, this is how the economy works now, and you can get so many packs per day or whatever, and so many new cards. Certain things happen when you break open the chest, whatever. Let me boil it down for you. The gist that I got was essentially, if you are a free-to-play person, and you're in it for the funsies, okay? The free-to-plays are in it for the funsies. If you give Wizards dollars, you can play the Tier 1 top strats of the format.
Yeah. Sure.
That to me is a perfectly reasonable setup. I feel like Hearthstone is not doable on a top level without buying something, without buying some packs, grinding out something left or right, or honestly just chopping your own arm off as you try to turn one deck into another deck, which is kind of what I got into, and it honestly just pissed me off. So I'm fairly happy.
That happens in Hearthstone too, though. So
right, but I'm fairly happy with the wildcard system in that I don't have to go chop myself off at the knees. But
yeah, I'm not getting a pestle and herbs and grinding and making things. Yeah. I'm not one of the 7 dwarves, no.
So this is one of those things that, because, wouldn't it be great if everything was free? Wouldn't it be great if we earned more cards? This whole wouldn't it be great thing goes on and on and on. And the interesting thing that I thought, I'm not sure a lot of people noticed this, but Wizards says, hey, we're going to add real world transactions to the beta, but we're going to give you all of your money back when the beta's over.
Right.
Which is, now think about this. Just think about this. If what you're kind of doing, and you're not, but just run with me for a second. You're kind of giving them a 0% interest loan for as long as the beta lasts. Yes. You're saying, here's my $100. You keep that till whenever you feel like you want to give it back to me. I'll be over here chilling. And yes, I get a payment, and yes, I get a service.
I did read it that way as well.
I'm just, I guess part of it's cynical, I guess, or whatever, or sort of like the gamer's going to game or whatever. As Wizards, they're getting some pretty sweet free money while they're doing this, and then they give it back later. But whatever, and that will be interesting to see what happens when you finally get gems or whatever. And honestly, I would much rather just see like a 3-game match. Can we get a 3-game match in there already? I mean, drafting's great, but we still don't even have a sideboard yet. Come on. All right. That said, moving on here to Zach Stella, who posted some artwork he had from the Planeswalker decks.
Yeah,
and it delightful. It is significant. I'm going to go ahead and let's see. I got him right here. And he put it on Facebook, and he said, piece number 2 of 3 of that drop was Temporal Machinations. I'm going to take a look at that face right there on the right.
Is that his real face?
That's his real face.
That is a face.
Oh, man.
Boy.
It is so good.
It's a good nose, Ruben.
Yeah, I had a buddy when I was growing up, when I went to college in Athens, Ohio, I had a friend named Levi, and he and I worked at the comic book shop together, and we used to muse on the shape of his nose, and he used to say that his father and his grandfather, who all have the same nose, he said his grandfather would say, if you're going to have one, was the saying about his nose, and Zach Stella certainly has one. This is quite the artistry that he has. I thought it was exaggerated.
No. If you follow him on Twitter, you'll get to see the actual photo he took of himself going like.
Yeah, it's in the comments. It's actually Facebook, one of the top comments on Facebook. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
I'm particularly impressed with Teferi's hair. I don't know. I just appreciate how it just looks amazing. I'll just leave it at that. So.
Right. So here we go. Here's the photo. I got it on screen for those who are watching the video. That's his actual face screaming, put onto a card, just flipped around. It's absolutely terrific. We want here to a little something that Ruben had pointed out over the past week. Ruben, can you tell us a little bit about what we may or may not have possibly inspired?
Well, it seems that we have a wider reach than we may have originally thought here on Magic Mics. There is a new Portuguese podcast called Laurenautas.
See, that's why I didn't do that. I'm not saying that. I'm not putting me in that situation.
I'm going to say it as American as I can. Laurenautas, Lorenautas, which has some Portuguese Magic content that I actually don't know what this podcast is about, But apparently, okay, you go ahead.
You help us.
So one of the hosts is a young lady named Meg Fornazari, who we follow each other on Twitter and have for some time. Meg has done research on Magic the Gathering in terms of translation and gender, in terms of college. She's done presentations and theses and things of that nature. And Meg had actually reached out to me one day and asked what our layout was, like how we get this three-person setup. And I was like, well, Evan tends to handle the behind the scenes, so you might want to reach out to him. And Meg has also cosplayed as Liliana before, and she's very involved with Portuguese magic. And before we knew it, she had me look at this show, and it looked very familiar. Meg sort of fills the same role that I do of being on the right. She also has artwork taking up her screen the way that I do. And there were several callbacks to our show, and they tend to talk about the lore and the flavor of the game, Vorthoses, if you will. But she said that we were in part inspired by you all. And I thought that was amazing. And we gave them a shout out on our Twitter feed, and they are working very hard to. They admitted that their first episode was a little rough, and they're going to be working on that. But just the idea, ours. Yeah, so was ours.
Go ahead and go back and watch our first episode.
Yeah, where I'm on the back porch.
Yeah.
It's a little.
But yeah, I have a great appreciation for Portuguese magic and Brazilian magic specifically, and I'm so proud of each and every one of them. I hope that they keep up the good work. And like you said, Ruben, in the Twitter thread, it's wild to think that we might like inspire people, and that's
so
insane.
Is this a lore podcast?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah.
All right.
We don't know anything about that, so if you want to learn about lore, go learn Portuguese real quick.
Yeah.
All right. So move on here to a few more topics before we have to wind it down. We're going to go ahead and going infinite into the ideas, such as those from our friend Seth, friend of the show, Saffron Olive, who talked about
as 3 ducks in a man suit.
That's correct. Until he proved to be actually real.
He'll always be 3 ducks in a man suit to me.
Of course. But he had spoken about an idea that wasn't not necessarily original, but he just kind of reframed it for 2018. We've spoken before about no reserved list legacy. If they just ban the reserve list, because the stupid thing's not going away. No matter what you say, no matter how you say it, Wizards Legal said that's a bad idea. Wizards ain't doing it. It's just, it's cut and dry.
Although I have to call shenanigans on that, though. Somebody had asked Mark Rosewater on Blogatog if we would ever get to a point where we could have Legacy Pro Tours, and Reddit kind of called him out on it, where he was like, the card availability doesn't really allow that to happen. Gee, I wonder why there's no card availability, Mark Rosewater. Like,
weird how that works out.
Funny that, yeah. Go
right.
on.
But that's again, that's just we can't have those conversations because they go absolutely nowhere. Wizards is not cool with it. So just ban them. Just get rid of them. Just get rid of the dual lands. Get rid of Lion's Eye Diamond.
Nope.
Get rid of Gaia's Cradle. Get rid of all that crap.
This is interesting. It gets rid of the dual lands. Like, that's the big deal.
That's the big one.
It gets rid of the dual lands.
Grim Monolith's a thing. Intuition's a thing.
It's not, though. The only cards that are even a thing in Legacy that are on the reserve list are Lion's Eye Diamond and Mox Diamond.
Well, City of Traders is also kind of a big deal.
I mean, kind of City of Traders and Gaia's Cradle, I guess, also. But
Gaia's
like, those
Cradle,
are corner
you guess
case.
it runs elves.
You're still going to have Brainstorm.
It's running elves, sure.
You're still going to have Force of Will. You're still going to have the number one culprits of Legacy right now. Where it's like,
you still have the stopgaps. You still have Wasteland and Force of Will as your ways to stop combo, and you still have the Fetchland Brainstorm engine,
and
so still function.
You'll still have Deathrite Shaman.
There you go.
You'll still have your Creature Planeswalker for 1 mana. That does literally everything.
It's an interesting way to go. I mean, I don't hate the idea, personally.
Well, this is one of those, but it would hurt the value of dual lands. Well, Legacy's going to die. Legacy has a terminal disease, and it's called the reserve list. Just so we're clear, that is a cancer on Legacy. It will make that format die. It's only a question of when. It is a terminal disease. You don't undo the reserve list.
But is the cure worse than the disease? Is the question here? Is the chemotherapy worth the cancer, as it were? It's not a great choice. I mean, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place as a Magic the Gathering retailer, secondary market person who loves Legacy. Yeah. I mean, at what cost do you try to keep this format alive? Because you're right. We're 25 years in. And we're already seeing $1,000 underground seas and, you know, ridiculously high costs on stuff like Gaia's Cradle and, you know, and Mox Diamond and things like that. So in 20 more years, we hope this game will still be existing. So what do we do then?
But will the format, will the people be able to play it? Like when
sometime between now and 20 years from now, no. Legacy will not be a format anymore. It'll be like Vintage. It'll be a specialty event that'll have 1 or 2 or maybe 5 tournaments a year spread out across, you know, 3 cities in the United States, 1 in Japan and 1 in Europe, and that'll be it. And that's going to be a sad day when it happens, but it's going to happen in the next decade.
Don't cry for us, Argentina. Like, we're happy to have those 1 or 2 or 3 events a year. Like, we're happy. Like,
I'm not saying that, you know, Legacy dies overnight. That's not how it works. This is a slow death that is caused by something you can't fix. I think that's just such a bold statement. I think just to say the word death, though, as to imply that that's all there is. I'm very happy to be playing Vintage right now, and I look at the Vintage community and I look at the events that we do have, and I don't look at that as being death or being like an end game. Like we're happy with what we have, and so I think it just depends on what you consider alive to be. Where you're saying it's going to be the death of a format, well, what do you consider that to be? Like to other people, here's what I consider, okay, and it's the same metric that you rate businesses. If a business stops growing, the business is going to die. There can't be growth in like Vintage, right? It's the same people over and over and over again. It might be one, maybe twosies, maybe even a handful of people have gotten into the format. That's a handful. Modern can take players in forever, constantly. As decks get, you know, interesting and new, and it doesn't rotate, so you can play whatever you want all the time. If Legacy has that, minus a bunch of very expensive cards that we can get out of the way, then it too can grow. There's just no growth.
Vintage has achieved second life thanks to Magic Online because there's no reserved lists online. So you can get new people into the format, and you can have things like the Vintage Super League, and you can get new and exciting and people still building and trying to brew with Vintage. You know, new innovations and new strategy articles. But that's a online specific metagame at this point. I mean, there just aren't as many. You cannot have an open series based around Vintage. You can't have a Pro Tour based around Vintage. There just aren't enough. The number of cards simply do not exist, and they never will.
It's always going to be capped, and that's why it can't grow. Because it can't grow, that to me is the death, where you reach that plateau that never changes, and if anything, it just goes down.
But online, I mean, honestly, it's been the shock of the last couple of years to me that the Vintage Super League has taken off the way that it has, because it's really given rebirth to televised Magic and to Vintage, which are two things that kind of needed saving in a way that is new and unique, and I always look forward to it. And so, you know, if that's the future of Legacy, that's kind of sad for me, because I'm a guy who likes to hold the cards in his hand. But you know what? If we have to download the brain of the dying body into a computer like we did in so many Star Trek episodes, you know, then okay, so be it.
Fair enough. So we only have time for about one more good topic left. So I want to go over here to Splash.
How many bad topics do we have?
Well, basically not as good as this one. But we do have one topic I wanted to touch on in Splash Damage, and that was the Overwatch Code of Conduct. You know, I want you to go back, particularly longtime listeners of the show, and recall how much we have begged and asked and pleaded for Wizards to just make people wear pants. Just make sure you shave. Could you brush your hair?
A dress code, just like
once. It's okay. I mean, could you?
I don't want to see your balls when you're giving your Rookie of the Year speech. I just don't.
I just don't need to see up your basketball shorts, bro. I mean, I need you to take this a little bit seriously. So we're over here asking for what would comparatively basically be nothing, because Overwatch is like, we're going to run your life while you are in our league. And yes, you may get paid $50,000 to $60,000 a year, but we own everything you do, everything that you think about, and the way that you act. We get to record, possibly make TV shows out of, and if you don't like it, screw you, because you agreed to all of this. You can't stream at certain times. You can't even talk about other products that are not Blizzard products. You can't even say that you like them. You can't even be like, man, you know, if you like so-and-so, you should pick up Far Cry 5, because that'll just get you kicked right out or fined or whatever, or disciplined in how they do so.
You also cannot stream with other people because that will constitute being part of a team, and you are already part of a team, so there's a conflict of interest there. I think the intent behind this was sound. You know, I feel like not a day goes by that we don't hear a story of some esports celebrity doing something stupid, which we have covered frequently on the show. And so I think having some rules there and having some consequences for this behavior that we frankly keep seeing is a good thing, but it just takes a really hard left and starts to go into owning images. They can claim streams if they want to and say, this is ours now, we're going to cut it up and use it how we want to. The fact that, like you said, you can't play competitors' games, or if you do, you have to be careful not to endorse them. You can't stream with others because that's seen as being on a team. If you have a team house that these companies pay for, you are subject to having cameras in every room of that house except the bathrooms. But your training facilities, your bedrooms, your kitchens, you agree to that. This is wild, and it's really extreme.
It feels like, and I'll point out things from the chat. First of all, there are codes of conduct at jobs. There's an employee manual at most places that you may be working at, and there's one at CSI. Things you can do, stuff like that, and that's fine. But nothing to this length. This length is incredible. You can't stream before or after events. You can't stream with other people. You can't talk about other products. I mean, it's like it's authoritarian kind of taken to the extreme of, we literally control everything you do. We hope you enjoy these dollars for what your life may or may not be under this rule set. It's just incredible. And worth a note of just like, man, you guys went all the way, didn't you? You just went, we're over here begging for, no genitals hanging out of your clothes. And Overwatch is like, we own everything that you do.
Well, if you have a camera watching you 24/7, you're more likely to put pants on. I mean,
you hope. you would really, really hope.
That really depends on the person.
Oh my goodness. So we are going to give away a few popper packs, Dominaria popper packs. You can find them on CoolStuffInc.com. And I've picked a few winners here. We have two winners. One from and this is pretty cool because I call it America's Hat. From Canada in a town called Medicine Hat. I'm not
Medicine Hat for sure.
Medicine Hat, Alberta, I believe this is. David W. Congratulations on winning a Dominaria popper pack, which I can't send you until the set comes out, but I got you. Okay. And Stanislaw M. from Seattle, Washington.
Ooh. Nice.
Congratulations on winning a Dominaria popper pack. And we'll be getting you to those, I think, April... When does it come out again? The set?
6th, I think. I think it comes out the weekend.
Like the 21st or something.
Oh, really?
When do the Challenger decks come out? Because I'm all over those.
Oh, that's what I thought they were.
The 6th is when the Challenger decks comes out, and that's next
Friday.
Yeah.
I have never, and Wizards, I'm telling you, killed it. I have never in the past 10 years felt a stronger urge to go play F&M. I can just give you $30 and you can just give me Mardu vehicles and I can just play. I love it. I am so pumped. It's unbelievable. Like, I don't have to worry or think about that part. The deck's there and it's good. I can just play it and move on with my life. Like, that is amazing.
There have been several streamers that have, Kendra and Young Mage being some of them, who have taken these decks for test runs and come to the same conclusion that they're extremely viable. And I have an Approach of the Second Sun deck earmarked for myself, and yeah, they seem like they're a big hit.
Yeah, they're huge. And actually, so we're doing something at the Cool Stuff Games locations where we call it Take the Challenge, where if you win F&M or you win prizes at F&M, we give you bonus prizes for using the challenge deck.
Awesome.
Nice.
Which I thought was cool. And any other game store out there, go ahead and take that one and run with it so you and your players can have fun. But so congratulations to the winners of the popper packs. We're going to move on here to the finisher. The 80s pop culture touchstone, Roseanne. The sitcom, best known as the venue for Mark Rosewater's most popular comedic creations outside of Unstable, returned to television this week after 20 years, I think it's almost 20 years, off of TV screens. A lot has changed since the working class heroes, the Connors, graced the airwaves, and Marrow has grown in the 2 decades since as well. So if ABC hit up the head designer of Magic the Gathering to write a new episode for the rebirth of Roseanne, what plot would you like to see, Ruben?
Well, in next week's episode, the cultural impact featuring poverty on Roseanne as a major theme, as it often does, is brought into focus as the Connors have a rude awakening when the higher-ups at Dan's company were found to be screwing up the company's finances by overinvesting in iconic masters. Got to diversify your portfolio.
You do, yeah.
The portfolios, for sure. And just for what it's worth, Wizards, we're probably going to talk about this next week, but Wizards, we're going to have a sit-down about these Masters products, okay, guys?
Ooh.
We're going to have a sit. We're going to have a little chit-chat, all right? I'm just going to let you know, maybe a little precursor for next week, but we'll pencil it in. Aaron.
Well, later this season, Roseanne brings politics front and center when Jackie and Roseanne have it out at the diner over the most pressing issue facing women today. Are the bathrooms at my local game store not a biohazard zone? Seriously, there's some gross bathrooms out there.
Some pretty grossy stuff. Well, in this year's season finale, in a classic Norman Lear-style episode, Darlene and David have a spat with Dan and Roseanne about the generational differences, societal implications, and political ramifications of what really defines a good game.
Yes.
The handshake debate will be solved, ladies and gentlemen, by Mark Rosewater on Roseanne. We can do this. We have the technology.
I really want Mark Rosewater to. He was, for those of you who didn't get the joke, Mark Rosewater wrote for Roseanne for like a season or two.
And got his name on like one episode, like as a story credit.
Kind of unreal.
Which is terrific. And congrats to him, of course. But that ends another episode of Magic Mike's. Thank you for joining us here live to discuss all things Magic. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Ruben.
Thank you.
We'll move on here to our final slide. I want
to checking real quick. No potatoes, right? No potatoes this week?
Not a tater.
Woo! Did it.
You did it, fam.
All right.
You got there.
Thanks, new laptop. I knew you could do it.
And thanks to all those who helped make it happen. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Visit our website at MagicMikesPodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters. Or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv/MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, on Reddit at Reddit.com/r/MagicMikes, and on Facebook at Facebook.com/MagicMikes. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week. Same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.